Let's transition. We kind of spoke about Stephen A's commentary on Jon Gruden. Let's get into the actual Jon Gruden situation. So apparently, how this all came about, there was a criminal within the Washington football team organization, and the FBI raided the office and the home of the alleged criminal. And this is how they came across these emails. So within the emails they found, because Jon Gruden wasn't even the subject of this, he's like collateral damage. So within these emails, they found he made some disparaging remarks about the NFL Player Association union, the Maurice Smith. He compared his lips to the Michelin Man. And interestingly enough, when that came out, it was just, a little apology. You had your victims going to bat for him and whatnot, as expected. No problem. So that wasn't enough. So the next day, they leaked out some anti-LBG or some homophobic comments. And that, put the nail in his coffin, so to speak. And he ended up resigning behind that, and and the commentary around it is very, very interesting, and it kind of ties into what I was saying about Stephen A, because if you look at all these sports shows where the most commentary about this situation is, you have plenty of victims coming to defend them. Even Keyshawn Johnson, who's on ESPN, I heard that they didn't have a good relationship, and he even I don't see him as racist, and I would say so. And then today I saw something where Andre Rison, a former wide receiver, kind of came to his defense about racism, and it's just it's not amazing, it's just disheartening. It's just a pattern that's like, again, where just victims come to the aid of a racist. He's I'm not even gonna call so-called a racist. Even if you would agreed, you feel that way, just let him go through what he's gonna go through. He doesn't need all this support from us. He doesn't. Colin Kaepernick, he didn't receive all this support. Even some people agree with him. They just, hey, whatever happens, happen. I agree with you. But it's a consistent pattern that we have to come to an aid of a so-called white person who's practicing racism that isn't, I guess, he isn't in a Klan uniform, or he's a more refined racist. We just have to come to the defense, and it's like, again, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I agree with everything you just said there, and I would urge a lot of non-white people who've been looking at the Jon Gruden saga to ask themselves, do you think that other white people know or knew the views of Jon Gruden before this came out? Jon Gruden's not just one white person who has these views. We all know that a lot of other white people have exactly the same views that Jon Gruden has, right? So I would urge all non-white people, especially black people, do you think that other white people knew that Jon Gruden was saying what he said for the amount of years that he was saying it, right? So at the end of the day, Jon Gruden, for me, he's already on the suspect list, right? Because he's classified as white, and that's the code that I follow, that if you're a white person in a system of racism, white supremacy, I do view you as a racist suspect. I think that maybe you could be practicing white supremacy if you are able to do it. I don't know if you are, but I think that there's a good chance that you probably are. And until there's not a system of racism and white supremacy, I will view you as a racist suspect. So that includes Jon Gruden. And proof that he said it. I mean, you know, it's exactly the same kind of thing where I say, where we both understand how it's very, very hard for non-white people, especially black people, to be codified in identifying what a racist person is or who they are potentially, right? So I look at, I don't really wait for white people to be exposed in that type of way. So like, you know, when we could all point to a couple of people like Mel Gibson, Hulk Hogan, you know, Donald Sterling, etc., being exposed to stuff that they said about black people. I already suspect all white people think like that anyway. So when Jon Gruden came out with that stuff, I just thought, well, okay, System of White Supremacy, and that's it. Now, I imagine if more non-white people just viewed Jon Gruden and any other white person, we just assume that that's what they think of us anyway. I mean, the evidence shows, I mean, there's still, the system of racism, white supremacy has existed for so long. How could it continue for so long if a lot of white people weren't actually actively keeping it going, right, by practicing racism in their thought, their speech, and their action, right? So, I mean, what kind of solution is going to what's going to actually come, the upshot of this is, I mean, Jon Gruden loses his job, and what now? So he's lost his job, then what? So we just carry on, so-called, I don't know, grabbing some more balls on the plantation again, frolicking and romping for the delight of white people. It's like a modern day Mandingo party. We're just frolicking and romping for the delight of white people, right? What's that tongue twister? Round and round the rugged rock, the ragged rascal ran, right? We're in a tailspin going around and around and around and around and around. And they know that. You know, if I was a white person, I'd think, what kind of motivation do I have as a white person to cease the practice of racism, white supremacy? I mean, I know that black people are victims of mine, but I mean, they're really not providing me any kind of stark reminder that they want me to cease that practice, right? Because, you know, I mean, so just to say as well, with the whole, I mean, I was talking to another person about that Jon Gruden situation the other day, and then with the Tyson Fury fight the other day as well. And I just happened to mention, again, like I said, I think, you know, that Jon Gruden, I just thought Jon Gruden was a racist as well. And then he happened to mention about the Tyson Fury fight the other day. And I said, well, I think Tyson Fury is a racist too. And he goes, what do you mean? He ain't said nothing, blah, blah. How do you know he's a racist? I said, well, I suspect that he could be. Right? I said, what's wrong with that? You don't have to, but I suspect that he is. So then we started talking about it a little longer, so then I started pulling up some articles of where Tyson Fury, where there's possible evidence for Tyson Fury's racism. I said, look, I don't even have to do this because I already suspect him of being a racist, but for your benefit, I'll just tell you, I may as well just do something. I said, if that'll make you feel better about why I'm suspecting him of being a racist. I said, well, look at what he said about, you remember Tyson Fury, there's a couple of articles online anyway, when Tyson Fury was apparently celebrating his birthday, and him and his family, I quote from the article, Fury and his family used the offensive language on multiple occasions while opening his birthday presents. Apparently they were singing along to, Notorious B.I.G.'s, Juicy record. Right?
I saw that. Who's that?
That was Tyson Fury.
That was who that was? Okay.
That was Tyson Fury, right? And then he also said in an hour-long interview, he said something about Zionist Jewish people own all the banks, all the papers, blah, 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 blah. Now, for the record, I don't think that's racism. I think that's white-on-white prejudice, if you like,
right,
because Jewish people are classified as white, so I'll just put that out there. But, you know, so Tyson Fury said that. He also, on another occasion, which is really funny, Tyson Fury you're familiar with Anthony Joshua, another boxer.
Yep.
Right? Yeah, right? And he's that now, during the whole Black Lives Matter time and protests, etc., Anthony Joshua was talking, victim of white supremacy. He was saying, as a suggestion, maybe black people should abstain from spending money, like so much money in white-owned businesses, and we should invest in black-owned businesses. I think that's perfectly reasonable, right? Black people don't usually invest in a lot of black businesses, but we usually invest in a lot of white, Asian, etc. Anyone else's businesses but black people. What did Tyson Fury say? Tyson Fury said, this is a direct quote from Tyson Fury. He said, let's just say I'm not pushing knives in or pushing anyone when they're down, but if it had been me who said it, don't shop in any black-owned stores or Asian-owned stores or anything. I'd have been crucified like Jesus. So basically, Tyson Fury is calling Anthony Joshua a racist because Anthony Joshua is suggesting ways that black people could counter the system of racism.
Right.
You know? So, like I said, I view all of these people as racist, including Tyson Fury, including Jon Gruden, and it's been interesting on some of the commentary surrounding Jon Gruden. I mean, what happens, like I said, if he loses his job, so what? If he loses his job, then what? Is everything okay then? Is everything fine? We've got rid of the racist. Racial, what do you call it? Is it racial, not racial showcasing? What's the word? I forget that phrase that victim of racism made up. It's just like racial focal pointing, where white people usually thrust this one white person into the spotlight as, or no, it's racial focal pointing, where they show that one white person saying this is the racist. This is the racist over here. So you get rid of him, or like Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the racist. So you get rid of Donald Trump, everything's fine. Where we know, with Uncle Jojo in the White House, racism has not been eliminated just because Trump's out of the White House. So, yeah, that's what I've got to say about Jon Gruden's situation.
And excellent commentary. And I would just go back to the NFL, because a lot of this stuff just happens, and, you know, I get into heated discussions with victims about certain situations, and, you know, years later, it comes to pass. So I remember Kaepernick, during this situation, and a victim, they were just, Kaepernick, he's this, he's that, he's that, he's that, he's this. All negative stuff. So, you know, I tried to explain, you know, it's bigger than, it's a structural problem. We see that with the Rooney Rule. They instituted the Rooney Rule, 10, 20 years ago, and it hasn't improved hiring practices within the front office.